it's our message. It's that the consumer understands that, it's our calling card to say, hey, this is quality, this is service, this is what our brand stands for. And like you said, it's very recognizable. You can see it from a long way away. I've been in airports in different parts of the country, and you'll see somebody walking around with the Sendiks bag. It's very gratifying.
Welcome to Over a Pint, where we focus on the fast-paced and ever-changing world of marketing, told through the eyes of industry veterans with decades of in-the-trenches experience. No theory here. This is real-world practical experience told to you by those that have been there, and that does include our guests. So grab a pint of your favorite local brewski or whatever your choice of drink may be and join us for the show. Today I'm joined by my co-host, Pat McGovern, new biz director at Acedia, an award-winning digital shop here in Milwaukee. And I'm Kurt Lingle, Vice President at Celtic, an award-winning ad agency headquartered in Milwaukee's historic Third Ward neighborhood. So, Pat, today I'm pretty excited to have this guest join us today. We've got Ted Balistreri with us on Over a Pint. Ted is co-owner at Sendiks Food Market. Since 1926, the Balistreri family has been serving the greater Milwaukee community by combining quality food products with exceptional customer service. Shoppers can expect an entirely unique shopping experience. Items made from scratch in the deli, bakery items baked fresh daily, signature top shelf meats, hand-selected produce, and an unwavering commitment to quality and service. Sendiks' goal is to provide the best grocery shopping experience, period. What's great about the Over a Pint marketing podcast is that we get to meet so many different types of really interesting and successful people from a wide variety of industries, from national and global to local and nonprofit and everything between, manufacturing, education, outdoor, sporting goods, travel, tourism, entertainment, beer, beverage. We've been touching a lot of bases with this podcast. But every so often, a true iconic brand makes an appearance on the podcast, and there is zero question in my mind that Sendiks is indeed an iconic brand. It means and represents so much around these parts and beyond for that matter. When I think of Sendiks, immediately certain things come to my mind. The highest of quality, great service. I think help and over-delivering are truly a part of your brand's DNA, Ted. An amazing and consistent experience, community and giving back, and family. From great grandpa Balistreri, which is an amazing story in itself, all the way to today with Ted, Nick, Patrick, and Margaret. This is, in its truest sense, a family success story. And I got to know Ted a number of years back when I had the opportunity to coach his son in Little League. And that's where I met him for the first time. And outside of Ted and his family's business accomplishments, what strikes me about Ted is his personal approach. Genuine, humble, approachable, obviously smart, but just a nice person. And I have no doubt this sincere approach has served Ted well in life and in business and sets the tone for the great brand Sendiks is and all that it's known for. So with that said, it's dynamite to have you on as a guest, Ted. Welcome to Over a Pint.
Thank you, Kurt. Great to be here with you. And I know that I have a big Italian-sounding name, but you'd be surprised to learn that I do have a mother, and she was Irish. And so I feel really at home with you two.
That is, we want you to feel at home. We love when our guests they feel comfortable. So Ted, we have a tradition. It is called Over a Pint, and it's called that for a reason. What we do is go around the horn, and everyone shares with us what they have in their glass: tea, water, coffee, soda, whatever their choice of liquid may be. What do you got for us, Ted?
Well, thank you for asking, Kurt. What I have here is a beautiful, crisp pale ale, Sendiks pale ale. It's made for us by a local brewery, Milwaukee Brewing Company, right in downtown Milwaukee. Our friends there, they do an exceptional job, and this is one of my favorites. And I was joking that today is March 7th. It's on sale for $5.99 for a six-pack, regularly priced $6.99 for a craft brew. That's about as good as you can get. So
that's good.
Not bad, right?
That's awesome. Hey, Mr. McGovern, what do you got for us today?
Well, I wish I had what Ted was drinking, but I have bought from Sendiks an Indian Pale Ale from Lakefront Brewery. Cheers.
That's a good one too. Yeah,
That's a good one.
Bright Red Sendiks. Well, I am having a beverage that you can also buy at Sendiks. This is from City Lights Brewing Company, and full disclosure, I've never had a City Lights Brewing beer, so I'm going to taste it real quickly.
You're in for a treat. Right.
It's a good beer. It's their lager.
Are we taking a drink now?
You take a drink now.
Okay. All right.
Good beer. Very good tasting beer. And I do want to check out their location. That's right down the street from us too, here in the Third Ward. It looks pretty cool. But I will say this too. You know what else goes good with beer? Like nuts. And this is their Cajun jambalaya. And Ted, I'm being totally serious here. I'm being dead serious. Ellen and I, this is like our go-to. So we do the Cajun jambalaya or the Sendik snack mix. You pour that in a bowl with a beer, it's gone. We love it. So I won't eat it as much during the show because it'll be too crunchy. But I highly recommend it. You can get this at Sendik's Cajun jambalaya. Trust me, folks, it's good. All right, so let's kick this off. So I guess the best way to always start a conversation is from the beginning. And I guess before we get into some of the Q&A, I would just love for you, Ted, to kind of just take a couple minutes and tell us your story, because it's a great one. So just kind of give us 100,000 foot version of you and your brand.
From the very beginning?
Wherever you want to go.
Yeah, so it actually is a pretty neat story. The business was started in 1926 by my grandfather and his brothers, and they were immigrants from Sicily. And it's interesting, obviously a lot of world events right now, but they left Sicily because they couldn't find jobs and the fascist government that was forming there. And I always joke around and say, they left this beautiful seaside village called Santa Lia, right near Palermo in Sicily, right on the coast. I've been there. It's gorgeous. And I think to myself, when they came here, they could have gone to Santa Barbara or some other warm climate, but instead they came to Milwaukee and settled on the coast of Lake Michigan. And of course, back then, there was tremendous job opportunities in this community. And I don't know that people really realize that, but this was one of the most progressive communities in the nation. Lots of job opportunities, and so they settled here and their family. And they had an uncle that was peddling fruit and vegetables, and my grandfather and a couple of his brothers started helping him out, and before long they opened their own business, a store in Shorewood on Oakland Avenue, and and this was in 1926. So you think about it, they were kind of growing their business right about the time of just before and during the worst economic times in our country's history. Before long, they had a second store on Downer Avenue, and then in 1949, they opened the store in Whitefish Bay on Silver Spring Drive. Sometime around there in the 1950s, the brothers decided that they were going to own and operate their stores separately. So, for some of your listeners, you may remember there were different Sendiks with different things going on, and that happened back in the 1950s. My dad and his my grandfather ended up getting the Whitefish Bay store. My dad and his brother became partners, and they grew the business. It had just been a fruit and vegetable market, and right next door was an A&P grocery store.
Sure.
And A&P, it was kind of too small for the A&P, so they moved out to Port Washington Road, and then it became Kohl's Food Stores. But
Okay.
But that marked, and this was in the mid 1970s, marked my dad and his brother knocked down the common wall that the two businesses shared, and then they got into the grocery business. Later on, and so it was grocery, meat, and then later on they added deli and bakery and seafood and wine and spirits, and grew it to kind of what it is. If you go back to the Whitefish Bay store now, it's kind of what it was. So then in 2001, my brothers and I, my uncle decided to sell his half of the business. I had been, I went on and got a law degree and was practicing law in downtown Milwaukee. And one day I got a call from my dad saying, "Hey, my brother wants to sell his half of the business. He didn't give me a choice. He basically said, I want you to join with your brothers and buy them out." And I thought about it for a couple seconds and said, "Okay, might as well. Let's do it." And really, for some of the things that you said, Kurt, it's an iconic business in my mind, and I've come to appreciate that more and more over time. But how much it means to people, and to the community. And so the opportunity to join, certainly in business with my father and my brothers, was something that was a little bit too much to pass on. And those opportunities don't come along very often. And so I left my law business and started bagging groceries and taking carryouts and stocking shelves. So that was in 2001, excuse me. I don't know how much you want me to get into, but basically what happened after that was there was a lot of change going on in the marketplace. And for my brothers and I, three young guys, I always say I look the youngest, but I'm the oldest of the three of us. I try to nudge my brothers a little bit, but we had lots of ambition, and we really wanted to grow the business. And if you remember back at the time, the grocery industry in this community was changing rapidly. Kohl's Food Store, which had been the go-to top brand in the marketplace, had been sold by the Kohl family and was owned by A&P. And they decided to pull out of the marketplace and sold their facilities. Century Foods, which was owned by a company called Godfrey, filed for bankruptcy, and so they had some internal problems that they were dealing with. Jewel Osco, which had a huge presence and very successful in Chicago, just seemed to be able to get traction here in Milwaukee. They decided to pull out of the marketplace. And then you had Roundy's, which was which owned the Pick and Save brand, and their franchisees. They sold to private equity. So this was all happening in the early 2000s, and for three guys, and we were eventually joined by our sister Margaret, we saw this huge opportunity for growth. And we started not really knowing what we're doing. We started bidding on some of these stores. An old Kohl's store we ended up getting in Wauwatosa. In fact, we bid on the Kohl's store in Wauwatosa, and almost simultaneously we were negotiating to take over the Jewel Osco in Mequon. Wow. And we didn't think we were going to get either one of them. And it turned out like within a matter of days, we got both of them. So we were like, oh my God, what are we going to do? And so we basically tripled in size overnight, and a lot of hard work. And we're blessed to have great people who have supported us along the way. And from there, we just started continuing to expand, and I'm real excited. We just recently announced an 18th store that we're going to open in Oconomowoc, hopefully by the end of this year.
Ted, you know what's fascinating about what you just said? And again, I want to say thanks so much for being on. I love your brand. I love what you're doing with it. I'm into the grocery store kind of just space. I just think it's a really fascinating space. So thanks a lot for your time today. Ted, you said it, and we're all on the same page. You've got an iconic brand. What strikes me though about that is, it's almost a double-edged sword at times, right? It's like, hey, let's not mess with the iconic brand, which is the worst thing you can do, right?
I agree.
But you and your family have seen like, no. We're going to double down on change. We're going to really push. And my observation from 30,000 foot away is like, damn, they just keep going. They just like, and we're going to get into this in a second here, but I got to be honest with you, Ted. I remember going into your store at the height of COVID, and it's stock shelves. Everything's there. Your supply chain was amazing. Congratulations, man. It's just like, and I know it's a day-to-day battle. I get it.
Great point.
Well, thank you. I can tell you that, like I said, we are blessed with a very dedicated team of people, and it takes a huge team, and they've done an amazing job. And I know we'll talk about it a little bit more, but I can't praise them enough and tell you how proud I am of them. They really carried us through this, and their hard work and dedication really exceptional. So,
wow, it's crazy. It's I'd agree, Pat, too. I remember, it's during the pandemic, the height of the pandemic. You're right, Ted. You and your team did not miss a beat. And when you walked in, it was as best it could. It was business as usual. It was, you were there. It was, it's especially, I think, when people needed, it's like beyond buying the groceries, it was there, never always stocked fully. But I also think, and I didn't plan on talking about this, but there was something about, I don't know if this is the right word, reliability, but there was something that during the past couple of years, especially when things were really going down in 2020, you have such a landmark location on the corner of Silver Spring and Lake Drive in Whitefish Bay, and I'm in Whitefish Bay, and I'll tell you, I think people were really hungry for something that just was familiar, something that you knew was going to be there for you. And I think that was something that Sendiks was able to provide when all other things were going crazy in our life. You knew that, there was something reliable and familiar, safe, when you walked in. And I always remember too, it's like for a while, it's like you forgot how it just felt good to go to a grocery store. It's like, I'll go out, Ellen, I'll go out, because you felt good.
Well, I think it was, you were all cooped in your homes.
I know.
And I remember being in the stores during that time. And of course, we were all dealing with this terrible thing that was happening. And a lot of people were scared, and rightfully so. And again, I give a ton of credit to our team, where we tried to keep, we wanted it to be, if you were a customer coming in, we didn't want you to see any of the panic, any of the treadmill going really fast that was happening in the back. We wanted it to be normal for people. And we had customers come in and were like, I know I probably should be at home, sequestering myself, but I just got to get out and do something.
Right.
And they were coming in just to see what was new today.
That was probably me going in, and someone might have said, "Hey, didn't you buy anything?" I'm like, I just needed to get out of the house. You were talking about the competition, and you were kind of going through it. And first of all, I love the setup. So I think every brand has a story. So thank you for the setup. I think that sets the table for your brand. It's important for people to hear that. From a competitive perspective, and correct me if I'm wrong, Ted, but obviously your industry is competitive, but I mean, it seems like to me, Wisconsin, southeastern Wisconsin, it's hyper competitive. I mean, some areas might be more competitive than others, but you just went through a laundry list of it was like a soap opera, like brands, and it's like, and that you all were able to, I mean, not just survive, but how you've just grown.
Well, it's interesting because when we started to grow, we realized that in this marketplace there was a void created with all those companies kind of pulling out, and we realized we had a period of time where if we wanted to grow, we needed to seize that opportunity right then, because it may not come along again, not to that level. Well, since then, and really starting at about 2010, 2012, probably 2012, 2013, somewhere in there, you saw just a lot of grocers enter into this marketplace. First of all, you had Roundy's bought by Kroger, and Kroger is, the biggest traditional grocer in the world. You've got the expansion of brands like Costco, Aldi, Dollar General. You've got Amazon continuing to, some of the biggest, Walmart growing. You've got some of the, we're doing business against some of the biggest and well-funded companies in the world, particularly when you think of Walmart and Amazon. And by the way, Costco's not too far behind them. But, so it's not as easy maybe to grow right now as it was. Right now it's, Whole Foods, Trader Joe's, Fresh Time, Woodman's, Festival. There's a lot of choice out there for consumers. So from a consumer standpoint, it's probably good. There's lots of choice out there. But where there maybe had been a void in the marketplace that allowed us to grow right now, it's a very, very competitive marketplace, as you've seen.
So Ted, given that the time frame that we're in and the competitiveness of that, just give us a little bit of insight behind the curtain, right? How do you and your family look at it and then go, okay, here's the chessboard, right? This is where we got to go. This is where the puck's going here. Like, break that down a little bit for us, because I'd love to get your thoughts on that.
First of all, we have some built-in advantages. One is that we're long-term thinkers. We're not in it for the quarterly earnings call or the end of year numbers. In fact, we probably focus less on that as a company than maybe we should. I don't know, but we're more looking at, from an owner's standpoint, we're looking at employee satisfaction. We're looking at customer satisfaction. We're looking at how we fit in the community. Those are really our markers for success. And we believe that if we do that in the long term, we're going to be financially successful. But that's really where our focus is. Does that kind of get to your question?
Yeah. And then in Ted, to what degree, again, feel free to share or not share, but to what degree do you look at the Sendiks brand and say, we're going to carry from a product perspective of what you're putting in stores, like, we're going to carry this stuff, but we're not going to carry this stuff. We're going to be this type, but we're not going to be. How do you guys even look at that? It's a big gymnastics thing that goes on, and there's not a science to it. There's more art to it. But there are certain products, I think, as a retailer that you have to carry. I mean, we're going to carry Coca-Cola. It's one of the iconic brands in the world. I mean, we're going to carry that because customers want it. We're going to carry Oreo cookies. But then we're going to also carry unique items that you might not find in other areas, like our craft beer. We're going to carry, healthier for you. We're going to carry unique meats, and recently we did a bison sale that was really well received. Big fan of the bison product. Big fan, seriously.
Yeah, it's really cool. So we'll be doing another one of those coming up. But it's our buyers and our store personnel that are listening very intently to our customers and figuring out how we can solve a problem for them. And that's really what it comes down to.
So the other thing I'll say, Ted, is one of the biggest gangster moves you guys have done recently is by the amount of Sendiks brands, like Sendiks own brands that you have, like Sendiks milk, Sendiks beer, I think you guys have killed it with, right. I think that has been a really smart move on your end.
Well, and it's something that's really tied into our history. My dad, many years ago, he was packing. He always loved to package stuff. He'd buy stuff in bulk and repack it, and put it under the Sendiks name. And so we learned that from him. And then as it's grown, we've really tried to develop that brand. So whether it's popcorn or a tortilla chip or a pretzel, coffee, which has been a big thing for us. We try to partner with local companies. For instance, our coffee is roasted by Colectivo and supplied by them. But we try to, over the years, we've developed these ties into local companies in the industry and develop these private label brands for them. Our idea with them is that we want them to be high quality, but also represent a value for our consumer. So we don't want our brand to be the high priced brand. We want it to be a very quality brand that is reasonably priced for our customers.
No. Well, the pizza their frozen pizza has quietly become one of our household favorites.
That pump pizza with all that cheese on it, it's really
awesome.
Yeah.
It's awesome. I'm gonna jump to this topic because we're kind of on that a little bit. I want to kind of get into culture, and I want to talk a little bit more about, you were talking about how you play the long game, in terms of what Sendiks looks at. It's like we're looking at customer satisfaction, we're looking at employee satisfaction. Let's go there for a little bit, because the one thing that I think is very clear, and I've referenced this to you in before show correspondence, is the consistency that you get with your brand. And I think it all weaves into culture. And the touch points that customers have when they walk in, and I mean this genuinely, it doesn't matter who you're dealing with. I mean, it just seems like, I got to be honest, I can't remember a negative experience, whether we're talking to someone that we know at the checkout who might be going to school with one of our kids, or or it's someone stocking the shelves, or it's someone at the deli or meat. It's people are there to help, and you know what? You can tell they seem happy. It's kind of like there is this part of this. Maybe it gets back to that family, but what you're building there, and I think all of that becomes infectious, because now you've got the right people, and guess what? It's spilling over to people like me, and you feel it, you see it, and it's hard as a business owner. I can tell you, culture is something that is so hard. It is so hard to build, maintain, and get it to the right point. It's an ongoing challenge, and I'm always fascinated with what you all have been able to do over there and what you are doing.
Well, thank you, and I appreciate that, because it is something that we work really hard at, and it's not something, I think, sometimes there's a view out there that the culture just develops.
Right.
No, you get a culture that you deserve, basically, and you can control your culture and you can make it happen. So I'll just tell you this story. When my dad and his brother were running the Whitefish Bay Sendiks, they had 100 employees, 100 team members. Just about every decision was funneled through them. It was very much, in a smaller business like that, where there's so many, where the owner is there and is always there, there tends to be that type of mentality where that owner, it's almost a top-down mentality. So the owner's making the decisions, the people are executing. Well, as we started to grow the business, we realized that was not going to work for us. If we wanted to get any type of scale, we needed decision-making happening at the lowest level of the company, not at the highest level of the company. So what we started to do is we started pushing decision-making down. And the only way you can do that is if there's a high degree of trust between management and your people. And so we've worked really hard to develop that trust. And so if somebody at the front line makes a decision, we applaud that. Even if it's not a good decision, we applaud that because they made the decision. We can always coach them regarding maybe how they might handle it differently the next time. But we're never going to discipline them as long as they're not violating a core principle. So what we've tried to do is be intentionally transparent with our people, letting them know what our culture is, and we talk about it a lot. It's a trust and teamwork culture. It's also a servant leader culture where our leaders are out there on the front lines every day, helping out. And the other thing that we've done is we've made it very explicit to every team member of what is acceptable and what isn't acceptable as it pertains to behaviors on the work, in the job. And I think because of that transparency, first of all, if somebody sees what we ask of them and they don't like it, they're going to self-select out. And so we're going to get people that don't buy into that, customer service and being kind, and a good friend of mine who passed away, Joe Bartolotti, used to call it that hospitality heart. You've got to have that if you're going to work for us. We basically, we basically make that a non-negotiable. And what's really interesting about it is, first of all, the decision making at the top is we're not getting into the weeds. It is being pushed down, and people are making decisions where it matters and where it makes the most difference at the customer level. And they do so without fear that somehow there's going to be some repercussions for what they're doing.
Wow.
Love that.
Yeah. Well, all I can say is it's culture is something, everything I read, it seems like every article, there's constantly thought leadership pieces that are out there. Culture, and you said it best, it's earned. You have to work like a dog to get it, and it's not easy. And the last few years have not been easy for sure on the culture perspective, but it's amazing to see. I'm going to shift.
It hasn't been easy.
Go ahead.
I will say this, that
yeah.
I think what you described earlier regarding when you would come into the store during the pandemic and it was almost a safe place, that is the payoff for having that kind of culture. If we didn't have that culture going into it, you would have had a very different experience. And it was interesting. Obviously, during when the pandemic first started, there was a lot of fear, well placed, because we didn't know what we were dealing with. And it would have been very easy and we saw this in other areas, in other businesses where employees just wouldn't show up for work. And we had our share of that, but not as much as others. And I think it's because of the pride and the feeling of appreciation that they've received before the pandemic. And of course, they received it in spades during the pandemic because they performed so well and they received it from customers. Customers in this business that is not so sexy from a worker standpoint. All of a sudden, the community really came out and appreciated what was happening, and the people that were delivering their food for them. That level of appreciation was really, really amazing and made us all feel good.
Well, that's interesting you say that's the payoff from a culture, the payoff begins because of the hard work that was done before. Once you get to a tough point, once you get to that hiccup, once you get to that bump in the road, it's almost too late. And what you just described, it's great how you said it great. It's like, well, what you saw during the challenging period, it was seamless because of what we had done prior. It just doesn't happen overnight. And if you think you're going to get there just when times are tough, good luck.
Absolutely. And I'm so proud of our team. They've been absolutely amazing. They truly are heroes in my mind. They put themselves in harm's way, and they did it with a smile on their face. And I'm so proud of the fact that they were able to keep morale up to this day. Morale in our store. I mean, I walk in our stores and I'm like, man, these people are happy. And I'm on conference calls with other industry people, and they're not experiencing that. They're experiencing a lot of hardship on the morale side. And knock on wood, and I think it's because we're so in tune to it, you know. But early on in the pandemic, one of the things we did, I remember one of our first communications to our team when all this was going down, was we basically said to them, listen, you know, this is a tough time. We want, first thing out of the gate, we want every one of you to understand that you're not going to lose your job. You know, we do not want you to fear that somewhere along the line you're going to lose your job. That's not going to happen. So if you are immune compromised, if you have somebody in your household that's immune compromised, if you're just scared and you want to give it some time and you don't want to come into work, I don't want you to worry about it. You're not going to lose your job. Boy, you have to have a really strong culture to be able to do that and hope that you can open your doors the next day, right? Mm-hmm. Well, I think just the fact that we, you know, put everybody's mind at ease, and again, that's part of our culture. We didn't experience, you know, humongous shortages. We had some shortages, to be sure, and there were some times where we were like, oh boy, I hope we have people show up tomorrow at this location so that we can open the doors. In the end, everybody pulled through, and we didn't have to curtail our hours, and we really didn't have to cut back in any of our services. And again, that's a credit to the team and how they've embraced, you know, the culture and what we've been doing. So
well, I think that's fantastic. And before I shift gears, I want to put a period on that. I want to mention Sendiks is one of the largest employers in the area. And I don't know if it's quietly one of the largest, and it's impressive, and it's something for you to be very, very proud of. You provide a place for many, many folks to earn a living and to learn too, depending on what level they are in their career or job path. I want to shift gears to branding a little bit, marketing, and I look beyond my shoulder here. So if you can't, for those not watching, there I've got a red bag behind me, right here, and I think this ties nicely into branding. We can talk a little bit about what you do from a marketing perspective, but I think we've got to start here, and I want you to share with us, Ted, if you will, what does that red bag mean? I mean, the value, the recognition. I mean, right? We all know this, right? It's like how many we see them, but the value and recognition alone. Tell me what that's meant to your branding.
yeah, you know, I'll tell you, it's really something. The two things. First of all, I think my fellow grocer colleagues think that we're nuts because that's not a cheap bag.
Yeah.
And they would never, you know, when they're buying bags for a fraction of the cents, these bags are cents, you know, and we could save a ton of money by going with a less expensive bag. But it's part of the quality and the service that we're providing the customers. Now, the red bag itself, I'm very blessed that my siblings are we have, you know, first of all, we're all very competitive people. The four of us are very competitive, and there's an incredibly talented. And one of my brothers, Nick, one day he's just one of these geniuses that one day said, hey, you know what? I think we should make our bags red. And I remember we had discussions like, boy, I don't know, that's pretty bold. I don't know, should we do it or shouldn't we do it? And he said, I think we should do it. I think we should do it. And he mocked some up, and we did it, and it's been great. It's our message. It's that the consumer understands that, you know, it's our calling card to say, hey, this is quality, this is service, this is what our brand stands for. And like you said, it's very recognizable.
How much so?
You can see it from a long way away. I've been in airports in different parts of the country, and you'll see somebody walking around with the Sendiks bag. It's very gratifying. So
it's a channel for your message. I mean, we talk about marketing. It's like, I know you do out of home, there's TV, we've seen it, and you do those very well. But this is a channel that carries your message, and it is. You're right. It's everywhere. I mean, it's like we take them to lunch. We put our lunch in there. We put Goodwill. It's everywhere. It's not a throwaway. It's part of your brand. So I think it's brilliant how this has just become such a front and center face.
Yes, I agree. It's been wonderful.
Ted, can you talk a little bit more about how you and the team just look and view marketing? For a lot of brands, it's building awareness, right? For Sendiks, is it about awareness? Is it about the repeat customer? Is it about something else? Like, I don't need to drill down really into the channels, but more of the philosophic view that you and the team take in terms of marketing, right? Like, we have to be out there in order to a lot in radio to compete with with Meyer, or what are some of the conversations that you guys are having about marketing / advertising?
Yeah, one of the things we're really blessed with is that we have a very, very loyal group of customers, and we see that we have a rewards program, and we see that 70% of our purchases, I think it might be more than that, are made from people that are part of our loyalty program. That's pretty high up there in the industry, in our industry anyway. We look at, it's funny because I think in grocery there's a price component to it, and so we feel like having that weekly ad that's promoting the unique items that we have and showing value is important to the consumer. So that's one aspect of what we're doing. And if you want, I can tell you about that, because for a long time, the interesting thing about the weekly ad is how you distribute it. And we've gone back and forth on that, and I can tell you about that if you'd like.
Mm-hmm.
That'd be great.
Yeah, and then the other part of it is more image-based. And so you'll see commercials on TV where we've got a butcher, and it's real butchers, and it's one of our butchers. It's not an actor. He's one of our butchers at our Meadowbrook store, and we'll have a produce guy, long-time produce person working for us who does it. We have a deli person. These are real people that work in our company who are promoting the brand for us through these vehicles. So those are more image-based and playing on what we think are our differentiators. So for instance, meat. We are still cutting meat in our stores. All of our stores are cutting meat. We are taking whole muscles and grinding it to get your ground chuck and your ground sirloin. That's very unique in the marketplace. Most, not all, are buying it in pre-ground and just regrinding it in the store. We're actually taking the actual pieces of meat and grinding it. Our delis are scratch delis. And so we're actually producing that product on site, whether it's a deli salad or an entree or a dip or an appetizer, whatever it might be. We're actually producing those on site. So those are our differentiators, and those are more informative and image-related pieces. Now, I know, Kurt, you sent me over some questions. One of the questions you had put down was, what do we see happening in marketing in grocery?
Mm-hmm.
Well, a lot of it is all going to social media, and we have our share of that. The Facebooks, the Instagrams, et cetera, and all these other grams that I don't know about because I'm not of that age. What's interesting is that we were, for a long time, we pulled our ad out of the weekly circulate. We were still producing an ad, but we decided not to send it out we decided not to mail it to everybody's home. And instead, what we said is, give us our email and we'll email it to you, so you have it. But we're not going to take the expense and send it out. It's kind of a shotgun approach. We don't think that it's really doing much. Well, a couple of years ago, we decided to go back into the retail, having it delivered to people's homes. There are a couple of reasons for that. If you remember 10 or so years ago, that weekly pamphlet was about this thick, that could get delivered to your home every week. And it was chock full of ads of all kinds of things. Well, if you notice now, it's gotten real thin. In our opinion, that we're more likely to get a look because there isn't as much in that as there was in the past. So we've actually gone back to actually printing it out and sending it to people's homes. For us, we think it's a win because I think one thing about marketing, especially when you're working promotions, is you've got to reach the customer where they're at. And it's getting harder and harder in this fragmented world where people are buying their media, and choosing what they want to listen to through their Disney Plus and whatnot. They don't have to sit through commercials and whatnot. We've got to figure out where they're at, and the same with you look at radio and whatnot. You can miss a whole segment of your customer base. So we've actually gone back to a print ad, which is kind of unique because most people are pulling away from it.
Yeah. It's interesting you say that. Go ahead, Pat.
It seems like, Ted, in general, and I'm painting with a roller here, okay? But it seems like in general, you guys are taking a lot of old school tactics and putting a new coat of paint on them, and they're really successful. Like you just talked about the meat, in the deli, the newspaper thing. There's, this is not just a one-off. It seems like some of those things that people have forgotten about. It's like these things really are working.
Yeah, it's really interesting, and it's funny because I have colleagues of mine that run similar businesses in other states, and they're all pulling their print ads out. And years ago, we told them, get rid of your print ad. It's not doing you any good. And now we're saying, no, now go back in, and they're all pulling out. Yep. And, I think the point is, what I've learned, and the point that I would make is that, again, you've got to meet your customer where they're at. And that changes. And, in a couple of years, if we do this again, I might tell you, well, we're doing something completely different. What I know is that when we're running a special on something, or we're having an event in one of the stores, and we put it in that print ad and we distribute it to the neighborhoods, we get a response. And that's what we're looking for. There had been a time where we were emailing out our specials to people, our print ad, our weekly ad, and we weren't getting the response to those promotions that we wanted. That kind of drove us back into the print and delivery to the homes. And again, the point is, it's constantly changing. And what's hot today might not be tomorrow. Our job, I think, as a business and as marketers, is to figure out where that customer is at and meet them there. And that's what we're trying to do.
We had it's so in line with a guest we had on a couple weeks ago. We were talking about how the landscape of marketing has changed. And 20 years ago, even further past that, it was very easy. You had 3 choices, to plan from a marketing perspective. Today, you have 50 choices and half the budget. It's become very, very challenging. And I think you're right. We always say the message is every bit as important as the channel, and the channel is every bit as important as the message. You have to know what channel best intersects your target audience, regardless of what that might be. And what we're also seeing, and it's how you're saying, you're kind of going back to certain things, mediums become reinvented. It's funny where, someone might say, oh, that's yesterday's news. Like, well, it might be yesterday's news today, but let's fast forward 5-10 years. That old yesterday's news becomes relevant again. It's just done in a different way. And that's what we're definitely seeing in the marketing world with our clients and what we're seeing other brands do, like yourself.
Yeah, it's really interesting. We love billboards. Billboards are fun. But, there's a saturation point. And so we'll run billboards for a month, and then we might pull out for a few months, and then we might go back in, depending on what's going on. And I think the main point is don't get stagnant, don't get caught in what you're doing. And, we talked about, I think as a business, one thing, and we learned this from our dad, we've got to reinvent ourselves every couple of years. And it's the same with your marketing. Your marketing can't be the same. It's got to be changing. It's got to be evolving. And again, meet your customer where they're at. And that's what we're trying to do. I think it's been a little bit successful. So.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Ted, I got to ask you this, and this is a great segue into this, is that given what you've just said, where is the market going? Where is the grocery business going? Like during the middle of COVID, I listened to a ton of experts talk about, well, now grocery stores are going to completely evolve and it's going to be all home delivery. People aren't going to go back. They're getting all that. Where do you see things going on home delivery and just in general? What's going to be happening? As much as you could look into your crystal ball and say, this is what I think.
Yeah. It's very dynamic. I mean, there's no doubt that the amount of change and things that are happening in the marketplace is really extraordinary. There's a lot of disruption. The biggest disruption being e-commerce and what role Amazon and others, Walmart, are going to play in that space. And my personal prediction is that, and I think there's one other thing that's going on. And what I see where the industry is focused, it seems to be focused very much on price. And especially for businesses that are not long-term thinkers, they're trying to meet their quarterly results. And the quickest way to do that, especially in a time like this where inflation is going up, is to pull back on labor. And you see that. You see that in stores where there are empty shelves and they're shutting down meat departments early, and they're not doing service in the delis and things like that, because it's the easiest way to give you that immediate return of profitability. So I continue to see that the industry at large is going to continue to get into a low service, low cost model. We want to play in more of a high touch, high service. We want to keep our prices reasonable, but we want to be more on that upper end, high quality range of things. So service, cleanliness, clean stores, employee interaction. Those are where we want to play. And we want to play where there's a lot of events. I mean, every weekend we have something going on in our stores that's different. It might be a fish fry, or this last weekend we had a cheese tasting competition where we had, I can't remember, I think it was 12 or 16 cheeses that were facing off against each other in a Final Four type March Madness type contest. So and that'll continue for the next few weeks. So we're constantly trying to find things that are engaging to our consumers and are creating fun for both our employees and for the community. So what I see happening is a further commoditization of the industry on one end, and I think that that's an opportunity for a business like ours to stick out in this community.
Ted, I'd be remiss if I didn't, you were talking about, we talk about the commitment that Sendiks has to the community, and I'd be remiss if we didn't have an opportunity to touch on this before the interview's done, but corporate responsibility, being a good corporate neighbor, community involvement, that all is something that I think is very genuine and something that's inherently a part of your brand. We see it as customers. Talk to us a little bit about what that means to your company and the role it plays.
Yeah, it's really important, and it's part of our brand. And you got to remember, I mean, one of our advantages as a company is that we are local. I mean, we live here. We've raised our families here. We go to the community schools. You know, I always say we have a love affair with Milwaukee and the state of Wisconsin, and we just think it's the greatest place and the greatest people in the world. So if we can play a role in helping in some of the civic efforts that we have, so we're very involved with a number of charities, Feeding America, Eastern Wisconsin, the MAC Fund, which is a great organization. Honor Flight. Right now, we have a big campaign going for the American Heart Association, which even though it's got a national presence, the money that we're raising will stay right here in this community. And heart disease is one of the, obviously one of the biggest killers that we have. So we're trying to partner with local charities, and then of course we support all kinds of little things. I mean, we would like to be able to support all of them. That's difficult, but we try to find little ways that we can support, charitable efforts that are going on in the community. Like if there's a run, we might donate water. We might have an auction item for a school charity or something like that. So we're constantly trying to embed ourselves in the community and give back. And that makes us all feel good. It makes us feel good as owners, but it makes our employees feel good that they're doing something to help their fellow community members. And so we're really proud. We've been blessed, and we love this community. We want to make a difference.
I applaud you for that. As a business, I can tell you, I think it's so important, and we're big believers ourselves. It's like businesses have a role to play. You can get back to your wallet, you can get back to your time, and you can get back to your talent, whatever that talent might be. And in our case, we know what our talents are, being in the marketing world. I also look at your brand, and I say this genuinely. There's two things I take from it. One from a corporate responsibility and corporate friend perspective. It helps build trust, and that's so it works with the customer. But I will also say this. It also is done because there's a want. So you do it because you want to build trust with your customer, but I know there's also a want. You want to do it regardless of, the positive ramifications it plays. And I think that's a credit to Sendiks and the company. Ted, I guess as we wrap up here, as we always do, we covered a lot of things here, but as we always do with our guests, we like to give the final word to them. And if there's any questions we didn't ask, if there's anything you want to say, the floor is yours.
Well, thank you, Pat and Kurt. It's been great talking to you and sharing some of the history that sometimes I even kind of forget. But maybe going back as a final thought, my siblings and I were really blessed to have the opportunity to spend a lot of time with our grandfather and see him, work in the stores and work with him, and then with our father, and then with each other. And it's just been a great journey, a lot of fun, and we've tried to make it fun, even though it's been a lot of work over time. But we learned a lot of lessons from both our grandfather and from our father. Treat people well. Keep reinvesting in the business. I mean, we're investing every year back into the business. And during this pandemic, we've invested a lot in our team members. And I think that as a business and in the community, and I think as a business, that's probably what I'm most proud of. And so I appreciate the opportunity to sit with you guys over a pint, tell the Sendik story, and share a little bit. So.
Well, you know, one of the great things about the podcast is that we get to chat with so many people, and I said that earlier, and I think one of the themes that came out in today's conversation was that you know, people are definitely the true foundational strength behind a company, and in the case of Sendiks, whether, like I said earlier, whether it's chatting with you, Ted, whether it's someone at the checkout, someone stocking, deli, meat, it's clear that your company believes that people are what help drive the success. It's embedded in the DNA. We see it in the community. It's clear, and you're doing a great job. So, on that note, that's what we have today. This has been Over a Pint with Ted Balistreri. Ted, we thank you so much for sharing your time with us. We wish you so much success moving forward. Thank you for joining us today. We appreciate it. Cheers to you.
Thanks.
Cheers, Ted. Thank you.
Thank you.